Secretary, if you will, call the roll, please.
David Boggs,
Here.
Patty Cross, Keith Lee,
Here.
Paul Looney,
Here.
Timothy Lusher,
Here.
William May,
Here.
Daryl Sanderson, Charles Stewart,
Here.
Brent Swager,
Here.
Russell Wright,
Here.
Russell Wright,
Here.
thank you, Sharon Jackson.
Here.
Quorum of 9.
Okay. With the quorum of 9, we call officially the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the December 9 meeting. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review those, and can Chair get a motion to either approve or not approve the December 9 minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Move properly second that the minutes from December 9 meeting, the Planning Commission be accepted. Is there discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
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 Opposed likewise? There being none, motion carries. The chair will accept the motion for the payment of bills as listed in the agenda unless staff has identified additional bills that need to be included. Hearing nothing from staff, chair will accept the motion with regard to the bills that are listed in the agenda.
I move we pay the bills.
Second.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second. Moved and properly second that we pay the bills as identified in the agenda. The discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? No opposition, motion carries. On the staff items, everyone should have received the proposed calendar of meetings for the upcoming year or for the current year. Staff, do you have commentary on the calendar? Eric, Robert?
Recommend approval.
Yep, that's it.
Commission members, any comments? Hearing none. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Calendar of meetings adopted. Staff item on the comprehensive plan. Eric, can you just give us a quick summary? You're muted.
You'd think
Okay.
after almost 3 years of this, you wouldn't forget to unmute yourself. But anyway, so we've entered into a contract with our consultant, and we're now kind of doing the prep work this month on project kickoff for that. So we actually met staff and Mr. Jackson and Mr. Wright, met with the consultant and her team earlier this week to go over the sort of what we'll call a project management plan, essentially. Uh, and that plan lays out how we're going to lay out the various committees associated with the comp plan and the process and public meetings and things of that nature. So that'll be an internal document for us to work through now to make sure we're all comfortable with the process that we're going to use and that it sufficiently does all the things we want it to do in terms of outreach to the various and assorted groups and members of the public. So that was a good meeting. We had a great discussion, and now they've shared that with us to kind of go over on our end and meditate on it a bit and see if we need to add, subtract, change, and that sort of thing. The other homework that we'll be working with internally, and I think what we'll end up doing is reconvening the executive steering committee for the comp plan to discuss the makeup of the comp plan advisory committee, which will be a larger group, including a series of stakeholder interest groups, as well as we'll try to get some appointees of kind of what we were referred to as John Q. Publics that aren't necessarily tied to a particular interest group, that are just members of the public that would like to participate. So we're talking about how those selections are going to happen. And, we're starting to make our list of which groups need to be asked to have a representative participate with us. And hopefully that work will happen here over the next couple of weeks. And the executive steering committee will kind of finalize that and start reaching out to folks in preparation for kickoff. What's also happening is some of city staff and the project teams, folks that have talents in that area, are working over the next week or two on project name and branding for the combination comp plan and development code rewrite, so that we can have this process branded, promoted, and create our project website for everybody to know how to follow that and keep up. So hopefully in another week or so, we'll get to have some ideas. Once again, take that back to the executive steering committee, see what everybody thinks, share that with you all, and get that much closer to having a public kickoff and having our ducks in a row to communicate to the public how this is going to work. And off we go.
Robert, any comments to add to that?
No, sir. I had the planning supervisor, Ben Judah from the county, participate in that meeting while I was in another meeting. I did review the agenda and have nothing else to add that Mr. Cockley has already referenced.
Commission members have a question of Mr. Cockley.
Jackson. Brent.
Okay, Mr. Swager, I didn't see you over in the corner there. Sorry.
Yeah, Eric, have you all, in your meeting so far, talked about the schedule, and at what point will it become public in terms of the overall schedule for the comp plan?
So the document we have now does include a basic schedule for the phases and the schedule for how those will go, which months we expect to complete certain tasks. So that's part of this. And as we kick off and publish the project page, I'm sure that's information that we'll share. Probably not this entire detailed document that is the project management plan. That's more at the moment for kind of internally for us to get our plan together. But we will be sharing, obviously, as we get material out there and get the web page up and running, some information for the public to see. Because we want to make sure to communicate to everybody so they know what to expect, and so that they know when the opportunities are as early as possible for them to have an opportunity for input. But yeah, we'll absolutely be sharing that with the public once we get everything nailed down.
Thank you.
Other questions by commissioners? If not, one clarification, Eric, and then we'll move on the agenda. Can you amplify at all when it is anticipated that there will be a public kickoff of this process? February, March?
I think with our to-do list, optimistically, it would be great to be able to do that in February. The only challenge to that is I think we're all aware as we sit here on the Zoom call is the limitations of COVID. Because one of the first things on our list had been originally planned to be a public kickoff meeting with some activities for folks to do and to kind of get the ball rolling and get some energy out there, which would really, really be unfortunate to not be able to do in person. So we're going to have to make some decisions, and that's kind of one of the things that the executive steering committee is going to have to discuss is, you know, the timing of that. We don't want to delay. We've been waiting to start this. But at the same time, what is COVID going to let us do safely and so that people are comfortable participating? And that may mean some combination of things. Either it doesn't happen quite as quick as we want to, or we have to format the kickoff in a different way in the meantime to get started. So yeah, the idea would be as we move into February that we get very close to being able to schedule those things, preferably in February. We just have to decide how that's going to work and see what COVID does and when this wave hopefully slows down and we have an opportunity to consider in-person meetings again.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to jump over, if you will, reports of special committees. And we have no old business. So we're going to ask the secretary to please call the first item of new business, which is item number 2 on our agenda.
Public hearing. Kendra and George C. Quire are requesting approval of a zone map amendment from Agricultural District AG to Rural Residential District RR for a 1.51 acre portion of the property located at 994 Shadrack Ferry Road. The tract is more specifically identified as PBA map number 059-00-00-008.00. This is a county item, and if you are going to testify, you need to raise your right hand and be sworn in. Do each of you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move to the next thing, I only saw 2 hands. Does that mean that there's no one else who wishes to speak on behalf of this matter? Seeing none, okay, next step.
Who's going to present for the county?
I am.
Okay. Just state your name for the record, please.
Ben Judah, Planning Supervisor, Franklin County.
And Ben, in your planning supervisor, have you reviewed the application for a zone map amendment from Agricultural District AG to Rural Residential District RR for 1.51 acres on Shadrack Ferry Road?
I have.
And in reviewing that, did you prepare a
You cut out there, but I think the answer is yes.
well, I'll
Could you
repeat it.
that? Thank you.
Did you prepare a staff report?
I have.
Are there any additions or deletions to your staff report?
No.
Was that staff report done in conjunction with your position as planning supervisor
Yes.
and based upon your training, education, and experience in the area of planning?
Yes.
Would you please indicate what your recommendation findings were to the commission?
Sure. If I could briefly summarize the background of the case as well. The request here is to rezone from Ag AG zone to RR. Currently, the subject property would be considered a substandard lot due to the fact that it does not meet the minimum acreage requirement under the Ag zone, which is a 5-acre minimum requirement. The property currently has just over 2.5 acres. Throughout my report, I do have all positive findings, and I do have 4 findings of fact, which follows. Number 1, the comprehensive plan, future land use plan designates the property for rural activities. 2, the rural residential zoning district is an appropriate zoning for the rural activities land use designation. 3, the proposed rural residential zone designation of 1.51 acre portion of property will establish a conforming lot of record. And 3, the proposed zone map amendment is in agreement with the comprehensive plan. And with that, I'd like to enter my report into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Judah.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the report be filed in lieu of additional testimony of staff.
So, now, Mr. Judah, just for clarification, what is the minimum lot size for RR?
It's an acre and a half, 1.5 acres.
And you're creating a lot that is 1.028 acres, which is not an acre and a half.
This would be a 1.51 acre lot.
Well, the 2 acre lot is being made into 2 separate lots. The
Correct.
1.51 and the remainder of that 2 acre and bit lot is 1.028. So we're
Yes.
creating a conforming lot in one hand, but a non-conforming lot on the other hand. How are
So
we
if you,
disposing of that?
sure. So if you look at the exhibit that's attached that was prepared by Simonis Land Surveying, it does show that the piece that's being cut off will be consolidated into the neighboring tract owned by Chris and Kendra Quire. That tract is already 14.46 acres. So the additional 1.028 acres will increase that lot size to over 15 acres. So if the zone change were to be granted and then the plat were to be approved, both lots would be conforming to the zoning code.
And the 14 acre lot is already zoned AG or RR?
It is presently zoned AG.
And the 1.028 acreage will continue to be AG as it's consolidated with the 14 acres.
That is correct. The only portion being rezoned is the new tract that will be 1.51 acres.
Okay, so that's not clear in your report. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Do any other commissioner have a question? Mr. Trigger, I see you. I see Mr. Lippney.
I mean, it's just additional clarification. So, I mean, in terms of the whole process, tonight we're looking at just rezoning the 1.5 acres, which leaves the other NSHE, and then the plat process takes place separate. There's the approval process takes place administratively after that.
Correct. So if the fiscal court were to approve the zone change, the applicant would come back and file a minor plat, which we could approve administratively.
Okay, Mr. Looney.
Mr. Judah, so the current tract is a little over 2.5 acres, less than the 5 acre minimum to be in the AG. Was that subdivided prior to the minimum 5 acre? How did this come to be as it is? Is it just predate current minimum standards?
I don't know the entire history of the property, but there are some other lots in the area that are substandard. I would have to make an assumption to figure out how that actually occurred, and I don't want to assume incorrectly.
I'm presuming that Mr. Jones will be able to enlighten us on that particular point.
I guess just a follow-up that it is substandard. I don't know how that relates to non-conforming, but it's substandard. But there's no, I mean, other than wanting to bring it in, no reason to have to do it. Is that an accurate statement?
It could remain as such, but the way our regulations are written, and I believe KRS also is written in a similar fashion, that it does encourage, when the opportunity is presented, to bring things into conformity.
Mr. Looney? Mr. Looney,
Yes, sir.
if we take that acreage and don't join it with the adjoining property, we are creating a more non-conforming lot. In other words, we're making 2 acres down to 1. We're actually creating something worse than what it is.
Oh, I wasn't proposing to do that, Mr. Logan, just to need to do anything at all, I guess was the question.
Yeah, I know you weren't. I'm telling you that when 2 acres, we don't have much we can do. We either have to leave it alone or we're going to have to join it with something else.
I was just the overall question, maybe Mr. Jones probably answered, what's the purpose at all? I mean, there's got to be some reason that they're going through this effort. It's not apparent, I guess, by the application.
Can we reserve that question for Mr. Jones? I think Mr. Jones can enlighten us on what it was that precipitated this action to begin with, whether it's selling or the subdivision is required by some other action that's unknown to us that put us there. And I think he's in a better position to answer that question than Mr. Judah. And I'd rather Mr. Jones to be able to separate the testimony, answer that question once he begins to present as on behalf of the applicant, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
And Mr. Wright, did you?
Yes, sir, I do. Chairman Jackson, this is directed toward Ben Judah, and I was just going through some of the comments on in the back part of the package there, and is this issue from Johnny Mika, who's in transportation? Is this something he's got this land division is for the purpose of building a new house? I don't know that I can grant a new private entrance on the KY 898. Is that something that he said the property frontage is already really tight? There's per Google, a street view looks like a farm entrance next to the driveway, and he says it looks like it's real tight, and it's might not be. He said if a house is in his plan, I would want the driveway to connect the private drive for 1,000 Shedrick, if at all possible. Is that something that we need to be at all concerned about?
I think he was. Sure. Yeah. I think he was just kind of looking at it as a potential, since he was aware that a division may be occurring as a result of this, that might result in a new dwelling. But at this time, the applicant's not proposing any construction of any dwellings, so that wouldn't come into play here.
Okay. Well, all right. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
I think it was more of a, if this were to occur, then that's what the position he were taking, but that's not the case.
Well, it looks like, let's see. I'm just thinking, okay, if you're trying to get this to RR to be able to have a lot size of 1.5 acres, so they're not planning on building a house there. I mean, why are you really doing this? I mean, I don't know. It would seem to be though.
If you flip to the exhibit of the proposed division, it shows there's a garage pole barn type structure that
Right.
will change parcels. Essentially, it'll go to the piece behind it,
Okay.
and then the house will remain on the 1.51 acre tract. So basically,
Okay.
a structure is changing lots.
Okay, I see. And it's not going to be building any. Okay. That's
Yep. No new structures are proposed at this time.
I see. That clarified. Thanks, Mr. Judah.
Yep. You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Jones, do you have any questions of staff?
No, sir.
And I got to ask if anyone in the public have a question of staff. Seeing none, hearing none, Mr. Jones, if you would, present on behalf of the applicant? And keep in mind the question that Mr. Looney raised, and see if you can respond to that also.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Charlie Jones, representing the applicants. We have no anything to add or detract from staff's report, so we agree with staff's report. On the couple of questions that came up, this original tract of land, which was 2.57 acres, was carved off in 1971, which I believe predates our countywide planning and zoning ordinances. So that's why it was created smaller than the 5 acres. And then all the land out there was just kind of blanket covered in AG, all the land out there. It didn't go anything specific for each parcel. And it stayed in that configuration up until now. So that's how it got created, Mr. Looney, in the first place. Was done in 1971, I believe. Then on to the issue about why we're doing it. Mr. Judah alluded to that. You'll see the garage is being carved off that 2.57 parcel to be consolidated with the farm tract, the 14 acres. So that's the rationale for the necessary need to do that. And there is no new building to be created, no new driveways. Everything will stay as is. It's just that that one track will be now 1.5, and the farm track will grow a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Jones indicated that the staff report was acceptable to the applicant, and in responding to the question that Mr. Looney raised, he did that. The question is, Mr. Logan, do you have a question of Mr. Jones?
No, sir, I do not.
Does any planning commission member have a question of Mr. Jones? Does any member of the public have a question of Mr. Jones? There being none, Chair will entertain a motion from commission members. And let me ask this of Mr. Logan. Mr. Logan, have we encountered any additional testimony in this case that would prevent the commission from taking action on this item tonight?
In my opinion, it has not taken action.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing, to adopt the staff report as a summary of the public hearing, and to take action on the item at this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to make that motion, please.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. May and a second by Mr. Lucier that we close the public hearing. We adopt the staff report as a summary of the public hearing, and that we take action on the item tonight. Is there discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, seeing none, I'll ask for a voice vote on this one. All in favor, please vote aye.
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 Opposed likewise? Hearing none, seeing none, motion carries. Now the floor is open for finding of fact. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, or whomever. I'd like to propose and make a motion that we adopt the findings of fact on at the conclusion of the staff report. Findings of fact are 1 through 4. 1, the comprehensive plan, future land use plan designates the property for rural activities. 2, The rural residential RR zone district is an appropriate zone district for the rural activities land use designation. 3, the proposed rural residential zoning designation of the 1.51 acres portion of the property will establish a conforming lot of record. And lastly, the proposed zone map amendment is in agreement with the comprehensive plan.
I'd like to second that, please.
Move properly second that we adopt the 4 findings of fact offered by staff on page 12 of the 13 pages of the staff report. Their discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
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 Opposed likewise. No opposition, motion passes. Now, I need to ask if there are any additional findings of fact. Hey, Daryl Sanderson, I see your mic on, so are you?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. In that case, then what we would need is a motion to close findings of fact. I got a motion. Did I get a second?
Second.
Move properly second that finding of fact cease. Discussion. Discussion. There being none, all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
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 Opposed likewise. There being none, motion carries. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
We just had the vote.
No, we had a vote on ceasing the findings of fact.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion based on findings of fact 1 through 4 in the staff report that we recommend we recommend to the fiscal court approval of. Let me get to my page here. Approval of zone map amendment from Ag AG to rural residential RR for the 1.51 acre portion of the property located at 994 Shattered Prairie Road.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Discussion? Discussion. Having none, again, Madam Secretary, this time call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Boggs,
Yes.
Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee,
Yeah.
Mr. Looney,
Yes.
Mr. Lusher,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Sanderson,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Chairman Jackson.
Yes. Did you call Mr.
Motion.
Sanderson?
Yes,
Yes.
he did.
Okay,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Jones, you would inform your client that the commission approved and sent a recommendation to fiscal court in the affirmative on their behalf. We appreciate
Yes, sir.
it.
Thank you all. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, if you would, please call item 1 under new business.
Yes, sir. Ampler Development is requesting approval of a development plan for a proposed 2,840 square foot Burger King restaurant to be constructed on the property located at 161 Arrowhead Court. The property is more specifically described as PBA map number 086-00-00-017.11. This is a county item.
Is Mr. Hewlett or Mr. Judah doing this one?
I am.
Mr. Judah. Mr. Logan, there's no,
No qualifications necessary.
okay, Mr. Judah, if you would, present the staff item.
Sure. All right, so in 2017, the subject property was rezoned from AG Ag to Highway Commercial CH. During that 2017 Planning Commission meeting, the motion to recommend approval to fiscal court included a condition that the development plan be brought back before this body for approval. Applicant applied for they filed for the development plan, which was sent out to the technical review team for their review back in November. After a couple rounds of review, all of the technical review agencies are in agreement with the plan and have since signed the development plan. The proposed layout is shown on the staff report right above staff's approval recommendation included in the report. All the technical review agencies have signed the development plan. If you flip over to the very next page after the site plan, the only signatures missing is an owner's signature, which can be obtained, and the chairman of the planning commission signature will also be obtained if this body were to grant approval this evening. That's all I have. I would be happy to enter my report into the record and take any questions you may have for me.
Okay. Do we have anyone from Ampler Development?
We do. There is a Madison and Will on this call from representing the applicant.
And good evening, everybody. This is Will Spalding with Kimley Horn. I'm the civil engineer on this project, and we also have Dan Payton with Ampler available on this call as well.
Okay, well, Will, do you all have a question of staff regarding their report?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Logan, do you have a question?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
Does anyone in the public arena have a question? There being none, then Mr. Spalding, I'm going to, I guess, call you and then you, so that you can do this report of the applicant. But if the other person, whoever they may be, need to do it, I'll ask you to point that person out and have them do the report.
Are you just asking me to run through the project?
I'm asking you or whomever else is there with you that might do the same.
Sure, yeah, I don't mind doing it. So yeah, this is a Burger King project, as mentioned.
First thing you need to do is state your name and address for the record so that they can attribute the comments to you that belong to you.
Sure.
And then go ahead.
Sure. My name is Will Spalding. My address is 1317 Crown Point Place, Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
So this is a Burger King project, as mentioned, off of Versailles Road, along Arrowhead Court, southeast of the city of Frankfort. I guess some site highlights. We've got access completely around the site, two drive-through lanes with menu boards, as well as a bypass lane on the drive-through side for anybody exiting the site. There is a portion of one-way access once entering the drive-through area. Stormwater will be handled, both quantity and quality will be handled underground. Let's see. All typical utilities are going to be tying into this. We have gas, water, sanitary sewer, telecom. So generally pretty standard, which you're used to up there. But yeah, I mean that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions if staff or any of the commissioners have any.
Mr. Spalding, do you agree with the staff?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Do you have a copy of the staff report with you, Mr. Spalding?
I do.
Well, look at that picture and tell me what that is that goes across the center of that lot. Looks like a road, but it may be a stream. Tell me what that is.
Let's see. Which page of the staff report are you looking at? Are you looking at just the
Page
site
2.
layout?
I'm looking at page 2.
So that was previous access to that rear lot.
Okay. Any other commissioner have a question?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the question on the development plan is that you said that's a double drive-through, is that right? So those are 2 lanes going through a double drive-through?
That's so on the so the entrance, when you come in the entrance, you have access, both ways. But once you come down to the drive-through, it breaks into 2 lanes, and then after at the menu board, it then merges back into 1 lane to pick up your food, but also has a bypass lane in case anybody wants to exit.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners?
Jackson?
Mr. Slager?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Will, you had mentioned that the water drainage was underground. Can you just describe that? I'm kind of curious on how you like a tension tank or something.
Sure. Well, so we've got the parking to the, I guess that would be the west of the site, is pervious pavers, and those are designed to infiltrate any water, and everything's graded so that the stormwater runs off towards that parking and then will infiltrate down through the pavers. And then under the pavers and a portion of the drive aisle, there is about 4 feet of clean washed rock and like, I think it's number 2 stone. So as in heavy storm events, it'll infiltrate through the pavers and then fill the voids in between the stone under there. And then there's an outlet control device that's also built into the northern portion of that parking that'll release it to the right of way along the state highway.
Mr. Swager?
I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions by commissioners? If question of Mr. Spalding by the public? Seeing none, floor is open for discussion and or a motion by commission members regarding this development plan.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lee?
I make the motion that we approve the development plan for the proposed 2,840 square foot Burger King restaurant, property located at 161 Arrowhead Court.
Second. Move properly second that the request by Ampler Development for approval of development plan for Burger King. Are there questions? Are there questions? There being none, Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Looney?
Yes.
Mr. Lusher? Mr. Lusher?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Sanderson?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Chairman Jackson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Spalding, and I believe Ms. Madison, I can't pronounce your last name, and so I'm not going to try. The commission has approved your request for a development plan for the Burger King off of Versailles Road here in Frankfort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, Madam Chairman, if you would call item number 2 on the new business.
In accordance with Article 1.09 of the Frankfort zoning ordinance, Washington Hospitality Group LLC is requesting approval of a waiver of section 4.06.34 subsections E and F of the City of Frankfort zoning district regulations in order to allow a hotel to provide food services and liquor sales to patrons who are not guests of the hotel, as well as guests of the hotel for the property located at 300 Washington Street. The property is more particularly described as PVA map number 061-24-07-006.00. This is a city item.
Okay. Mr. Cockley, are you the presenter?
Hey, yeah, I'll be presenting, Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Sure. Good evening, Commission. George Miller, City of Frankfort Senior Planner. So the subject property is a 15,000 square foot lot located at the northern intersection of West Main Street and Washington Street. It's zoned SH, which is a special historic district zone, which is located directly adjacent to the Central Business District in downtown Frankfort. It's surrounded by a mixture of uses that range from commercial and offices to residential and mixed-use properties. It's currently vacant. It has been for a couple of years, and it was last used as offices for the Kentucky Heritage Council, who is now located over there on, I believe it's High Street. Yeah. So the existing structure on the building, it's a historic building. It was built in 1815 and was originally constructed as a residence at that time. So the current applicants, they acquired that property in 2021 and are proposing to operate a 13-room boutique hotel with a restaurant and bar in the existing 2-story building. Hotels and restaurants are both conditional uses within the special historic zone, but specifically hotels have special conditions that are listed in Article 4.06.34 of the zoning ordinance. The applicant would like the restaurant that's going to be located in their hotel to the ability to serve food and liquor sales to patrons other than guests of the hotel. So therefore, they're requesting a waiver from the Planning Commission from subsection E and F of that aforementioned article, which states that if a hotel proposes to provide food services, that they should only be provided to guests of the hotel, and F, which states that if it were to provide liquor sales, that shall be only to guests of the hotel as well. In September 2019, the Architectural Review Board approved 2 separate conditional uses to operate a restaurant and hotel at this property. That proposal was slightly different than this one for a couple of reasons. One, the request was 2 different ownerships, one for the hotel and one for the restaurant use, and 2 separate conditional uses were granted. And 2, the restaurant and the hotel were proposed to be physically split and separated from each other. That would have met building code requirements. So kind of think of it as 2 separate dwelling units located within the same building, which is what we commonly find in the downtown area. This proposal will not physically separate the uses, and the ownership will be under the same entity. So under staff analysis, so Article 1.09 of the City of Frankfort zoning ordinance states the provisions for waivers and modifications. Under A, we had positive findings, B as well. Under B, I would like to specifically say that this proposal would enhance the vitality and the preservation of the historic resources of downtown Frankfort, as stated in the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. Subsection C, the modification will not have a significant adverse impact on the public interest. We had a positive finding there. Restaurants themselves are conditional uses within the special historic zone without any special requirements. And staff feels that a hotel with a non-separated restaurant in the same building will not adversely impact the public interest in surrounding neighborhood. Had positive finding for subsection D. Subsection E, I would like to add under one of that, under superior alternatives, a positive finding. In my staff report, I didn't originally include a finding under that, but I would like to add that as positive. The economic viability of this adaptive use would be further strengthened if the hotel were permitted to serve food and alcohol to patrons who are not guests of the hotel. In the applicant statement, which is attached at the end of your report, they note that the commercial success of this project would be greatly diminished if the restaurant and bar patrons were limited guests only of the hotel. Positive finding for subsection 2 under E as well. Under 5 there, another positive finding. There should be little or no impact to users of this development or the surrounding development area if this requirement were waived. As stated earlier, restaurants themselves are conditional uses within the SH zone. For example, a restaurant located directly adjacent to a hotel that only serve food and alcohol to guests would be permitted as a conditional use, and its impact would be nearly the same as a hotel that does serve food to the guests, as in this case. The Planning Commission traffic engineer did review the plans of this request, and they stated they didn't have any concerns as long as it met our parking requirements as set forth in the zoning ordinance. Staff, based upon the parking regulations in Article 12, staff finds that it does meet the requirements as stated in the zoning ordinance. The parking minimums would be for this proposal are 13 spaces for hotels. Hotels in the SH are required to provide half of their parking on site. There is an existing permeable parking area that exists that has sufficient space for 6 spaces. A compact space could be accommodated to account for that half a space if we kind of had to shuffle things around. Section 12.012 of the zoning ordinance also states that the provision of parking is not required for individual businesses in the SH zone. So if a conditional use were to be granted for restaurants, for example, as I mentioned earlier, it would not be required to have any on-street or on-site or off-site parking. I did talk to a gentleman today on the telephone. His name was Mr. Jeff Bibb. He was representing the First Corinthian. Did I get that's the wrong church? Which church? The Methodist Church.
Presbyterian.
Let me look here. First Presbyterian. There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Yes, and he said that they did have concerns. They didn't have any problems with the hotel use, and they were supportive of that. They did just have concerns with the idea and provision that a restaurant and bar be able to serve to guests and patrons who weren't guests of the hotel. They just had some concerns with parking. They do have that adjacent parking lot directly north of the site. They lease that out to Herod Brothers Funeral Home, I think, during the week. And then when they have services, of course, they reserve it for their congregants. But he did just state that they did have concerns about maybe, on-street parking. They do have some elderly folks that might have to, if the restaurant were to take up too many spaces along the street, concerns about that. I will note that the traffic consultant did say that he did anticipate a lot of this to be pedestrian foot traffic. So I felt like that might alleviate some of their concerns. So after review of the applicant's documentation, site plan and drawings, traffic consultant review and comments and analysis within the report, and my testimony, I recommend approval of the waiver. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. We do have the applicants here, as well as their architect and another advisor that they are working with as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission if you have them.
Okay, let's start here. Mr. Logan, do you have any questions of staff? Mr. Logan, do you have a question of the staff?
No, sir.
Okay.
Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Lee, was that you?
Yes, sir. And this might be more for the applicant, but I wanted to ask staff. If I remember right, they've changed a few models on this thing, but at one time there was a rooftop bar, and I think where this piece of property is, with the churches around it, with residential stuff, I really don't have a problem with the waiver if it's all indoors. If it's outdoors, if we're going to have events, if we're going to have live bands, if we're going to have stuff like that, I do have some concerns, and if that might have to have some sort of condition on, how to do it, because we have to. I think we have to be very respectful for the property and church people around there that have been there longer than this thing's been a proposed restaurant. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I stated earlier in my staff report, in 2019, that conditional use, when it got approved, it also requested a COA to have a large rooftop bar area on the roof. And that, at that time, that did not get approved by the Architecture Review Board. And this request, that's not even being considered before the ARB, which will go before on Tuesday. But there is a small area, and the applicant can further attest to the exact dimensions. There's a small area that's about 10 feet by 12 feet on an existing landing that's in the back portion in the corner of the building. That would just be kind of like a little area, lounge area for people to come if they wanted to sit in that area. They won't be served. There will not be like a bar out there where they'll be serving food and alcohol. I don't know. I'm assuming that maybe someone could walk out there with a glass of wine and sit on that little area terrace, but it's only 10 by 12 feet, so can't get too many individuals up there. But it is quite secluded because it's in that back northern corner where there's kind of that existing patio area. But yeah, as this will not have that rooftop bar at all. It would all mostly be confined to the indoors, except for that small little area where people can go out if they wish and just kind of sit outside and relax.
Okay. And my last question, please, Mr. Chairman. In the historical district and in that area, is there city provisions as far as quiet hours, or how much noise or the restaurant?
Right.
Does that apply to them or in that area? And the reason being, if I was to grant, I would think you might need some conditions. If they're not warranted, I don't want to put them on there if there's already quiet hours and stuff for outdoor stuff already in place.
There is an existing city ordinance about a noise ordinance that's in our regular city code of ordinances. I'm kind of thinking off the top of my head. I believe it's past 11 p.m. And the police department is the department that enforces that order. And I believe in that ordinance it says after so many complaints, they can do some sort of enforcement action. I can't remember exactly, and I don't want to quote it. But there is an existing ordinance. And of course, if there were issues, we're happy to work with the police department if there are noise issues and notify them at the onset of this, that this is going on. And if they do, to contact us and let us know, and to communicate with the property owner. And they are on here, and I'm sure they could speak to that a little more. And they're going to be, I'm sure they're going to be very responsible property owners and business owners as well. So,
and my final question: if I believe in the back of that, it's a bricked wall courtyard. In the back, there is a patio, but there's also a lot of grass and whatnot. If they wanted to have events such as weddings or receptions or things of that nature, they would. This waiver doesn't pertain to that. They'd have to get a permit, a use permit for that, I would assume. Is that correct?
If they want to do a special event, with the hotel, right, and restaurant, we do have that as a separate use of recreation halls and whatnot, and reception halls. Of course, you do commonly find, right, things like weddings and receptions at hotels. Staff, I haven't really considered that in my review of this. Let's see what the applicant says, and I'm happy to kind of think about this for a few minutes and see if we can come to certain resolution if they are thinking about doing that kind of use there and might entail.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm just concerned about noise outside and
Right.
the quality of that be respectful to the neighbors. Thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's right.
Yeah. This is addressed to Mr. Miller, and that also to what Mr. Lee said. Commissioner Lee saying about noise, but in reality, there's not really, as long as you abide by noise ordinances. I mean, anybody can set up a set of drums and a guitar and a keyboard for almost any reason, right? They're not restricted. I mean, a neighborhood could do it. A bookstore could do it. Or is there outside of was there any kind of prohibition from, once they get the ability to sell? They might go out. You said it's a small area out back, but that wouldn't prohibit them from setting something up, making music, right? I mean, these aren't attached. I'm not sure about that. That's not a concern, but in addressing what might be allowed or not allowed, I'm wondering if that's even a real issue.
Sure.
And then the noise, like Mr. Lee said, yeah, there is a noise ordinance that is a concern, but as far as the ability to be able to have outdoor, just a band out there, I wouldn't think that would be restrictive based on what the application.
Right. Yeah, that would be quite. We would really be kind of nitpicking and honing in on the zoning ordinance there if that were to happen, and it also kind of just depends as well, on the how often it occurs. But yeah, you're right. That's kind of a subjective. The noise ordinance is a subjective thing. So when someone calls, police department investigates, they talk to the individual who's doing that, and if it becomes a recurring thing, then they can do some sort of enforcement action on their part to try to get that to stop. But,
right. Are you? I don't know, but we have setups downtown on St. Clair and out in front of the, on Broadway, right in front of where you have the bookstore and all that. Do those people to set up a band and play music? Do they have to have any kind of permit issue there? Is that allowable? They don't. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Lusher, I see your mic on. Are you?
No, I'm good. Mr. Wright answered his own question.
Okay. And,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
the question, is there, it shows on the plans, the parking, is that going to be there in the back in that grassy area? Is that the half a dozen parking spaces? Is that where that's going to be?
yeah. Yes, Mr. Stewart, that's correct. It's kind of grown up with grass. It's constructed of pavers now, and it just hasn't been super maintained in the last couple of years. But yeah, there's existing pavers there, and they plan to kind of rehab and refurbish that area. So it will be permeable paving, so that's good, and it already exists.
Okay. And where will the restaurant be? Will that be right next door? Where is that going to be?
The restaurant's going to be located, I believe it will have an entrance along the Washington Street side, if I recall correctly.
And then that patio you're talking about is just right in front of where the restaurant is going to be, that kind of patio area?
Yeah, let me pull up my plans here real quick.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, so the restaurant's there in that front section of the building with an entrance along Washington Street. If you kind of go back there, if you look on A8 of the architectural drawings that are an attachment to your staff report, you can kind of see where it goes back there, the porch area. There's an area up there on the second floor where that little rooftop deck area will be. Not roof. I don't like calling it a rooftop deck because it's not on the top part of the roof. It's kind of like in a little cubby. It's kind of strange to. It's on above a first floor roof, but the building is 2 floors, so it's completely surrounded.
Jordan, can I jump in on that for a second? Do I need to state name and address, guys?
Miss Burnworth, are you
Yes.
the applicant?
I am the architect for the applicant.
In that case, there will be an opportunity for you to present on behalf of the applicant in terms of the questions being asked. Just keep them in mind so that when
I
I
will.
say it's your turn, you can step up.
Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Well, we're going to call on you in a minute. Okay, any other questions by commissioners? If not, I'd like to make sure
Mr. Chairman,
that...
I have one. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I have one more quick question. And
Okay.
it's in regards to alcohol sales on Sunday. And I'm just not well aware of the policy in that area. And I'm not sure Plains Zoning even has that ability, but is alcohol served now on Sundays after 1 o'clock? Is that the policy? Or does anybody know that? That's a question
Yes,
that was brought up to me. Please. Thank you.
Mr. Lusher with this link.
Yeah, there are absolutely alcohol sales on Sunday without restriction. It depends on business to business. There's a special city license for Sunday sales, and it has nothing to do with zoning.
Gotcha. I understand. Just this historical district close to all those churches is a question I thought we should put on the record. Thank you.
Okay. I think commissioners ought to keep in mind that on the opposite end of downtown, over by the concrete bridge, there are several restaurant bar facilities there whose ability to operate is controlled by a set of ordinances and et cetera. And then Mr. Lusher's place, which is down by the transportation cabinet building, are controlled by the same ordinances. I would think that this new restaurant, bar, hotel would be guided by the same principles, except it is located in a quiet neighborhood, quite frankly. And
Mr. Jackson, on your last trying to get to
I can't hear you, Mr. Logan.
I said on your last meeting, are you trying to you get to testify in this?
I'm trying not to testify, Mr. Logan. But it's in a quiet neighborhood, which means that as a conditional use, we may be able to have some conditions that affect this new business that if it were located in another area, we would not have to deal with. So I think we just need to keep that in mind as we listen to both what the city staff is presenting and then what the applicant will be presenting here in a few minutes, that kind of help us get the right feel for the applicant's request. And if there aren't any other questions by commissioners of the staff, we're going to ask the applicant, in this case, Washington Hospitality Group, and I'm Ms. Burnworth, that's you, correct?
Right, I'm the architect for the group, and Tyler and Amber are here as well as some other folks here. So I cannot wait for you to talk with them. I think that'll bring a lot to light.
Okay, so who's doing the presentation?
I'd be happy to talk about the project.
In that case, then we're going to ask Ms. Burnworth to please do the presentation for the applicant. Please state your name and address and company and make the presentation, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rebecca Burnworth. I'm with Burnworth Design. We are at 414 Plunkett Street in Lexington, 40508. I wanted to talk a little bit about, thank you, Jordan, by the way, for presenting your findings. I think everything that Mr. Miller did present this evening is along the lines of, we're in agreement with his report. I want everybody to remember too that this isn't primarily a bar and restaurant. This is primarily a hotel. The applicants would like to have guests be able to come, and of course outside people as well. I think we're looking at it as uh, as a boost for downtown Frankfort to get people, who might be officing a few doors down to be able to come over for lunch or to join a guest in the evening. Their plan was to have some events, so I would like to have them talk to you more about that. But again, that is not the primary use of this structure. I think for and architecturally, to have such a I mean, we're barely touching the floor plan. The house is actually being, I think, very well respected historically. The rooms that are in that are just so well laid out to have hotel rooms or bedrooms, if you will. And I think we're right there at that cusp of 100 people. I think that would be with restaurant and event combined if there were one. I don't think we're talking about super large events that would exceed, or go near what some of the concerns that I'm hearing from some of the members here. I would love for my folks Tyler and Amber, if you want to talk and kind of reiterate that.
Yeah,
Does
I'm
anybody
here,
have any
Rebecca.
questions? Okay.
So yeah, part of this property here is a lot of people have a lot of attachments in Frankfort to this specific property, the history of the property and the nature of it. Honestly, the property is gorgeous, and we would really like to restore this to what it was, just a magnificent structure, and really have this as something that can highlight the history of Frankfort. And we'd like to share that history and the entire property with the locals in Frankfort. If we don't get this sign off from you guys to have the restaurant available to the public as well, I feel like it does deprive the local residents of being able to come in from work and stuff at the end of the day, come into our lounge and sip on a nice bourbon in our bourbon bar and see the historic feel. We're looking at having a lot of, references to the previous building owners. And we'd like to really highlight the history of this property in Frankfort, make it more of a museum hotel to an extent where you can come in and really see just this magnificent property.
Other comments? All right. Mr. Logan, do you have a question of Tyler, Amber, or Burnsworth?
I would only ask the owners if they agree with the recommendation of staff.
I believe so. I believe that this is, something that would be beneficial for downtown Frankfort to have another location you can walk to. As the staff stated, a lot of this is going to be pedestrian traffic, and in line with the 2018 Frankfort City Master Plan, having a more walkable city like that and bringing residents down to enjoy the downtown area, this fits right in line with that as well.
Thank you.
Hey, Tyler and Amber, we haven't heard from you, and I'm not asking you to speak particularly. You heard the concern. There was like several concerns voiced by commission as it relates to noise and that kind of thing. What's your response to those inquiries?
So Mr. Jackson, I do believe the city noise ordinance that is currently in place should be, sufficient enough to establish the rules. We're not looking to create a disruption in the neighborhood or anything like that. We are looking to work with the city and really help to maximize this property as best for all residents. And part of that is we would like our residents in Frankfort to be able to come in and enjoy a dinner and a drink in the afternoon. And without this variance, this conditional use, we would only be able to serve our guests, and that I feel like deprives a lot of our local residents of the history of this property as well, if we can't allow them in the building.
Okay, now the context of the questions is, if you will, the church that's directly behind your facility. I think the parishioners meet on Wednesday evening for any number of activities and etc. They have weddings, they have other special events that may coincide with your guests coming in to have a drink or have dinner or whatever. And the concern is that the church activities are not overwhelmed by, I guess, noise coming from your business. You have a feel for how that can be assured as we go through this.
Well, Mr. Jackson, honestly with you, I would hope that if there's going to be a wedding at the church next door, I would hope that we're the reception location. If they're coming over to us and enjoying it, that would be the best case scenario for us.
Well, I like your answer, but what if you are not the destination location for the reception?
Again, I do feel like we are only 13 or 14 rooms here. We're not a large hotel. We do have parking in the back as well as street parking. We could perhaps work out a deal with the church and the funeral home for, additional parking if we need it or if they need it. We could work with them in some manner to assure everybody that there is enough parking, that no events are getting disrupted.
Something we were considering as well was having a valet service. This is Amber LeGroux. Is offering a valet service to people who come to the restaurant. And mind you, the restaurant it'll be a very small scale restaurant with small plate foods. And it's certainly not going to, we're not going to be serving, I doubt, over 50 people for the restaurant. We just don't have that kind of space.
Okay.
You're right. We don't have that kind of space even to prepare that food.
Right.
So, thank you, Amber.
Okay. Good question. Please.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee.
Yes, this is for the applicant. What is and you might not know this until you get finally done, but what do you think the maximum occupancy for your lounge restaurant will be?
So there's an architectural response for that. My calculations were about 100, so that's a maximum. Of course, I'm obligated to calculate that. But again, and I'd like to hear from Tyler and Amber on this. That's different than their goals and what would be considered good service. Amber and Tyler, if you want to comment on that.
So, Amber, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I think for the restaurant and bar area, if it's a night where so we're in the middle of still working out some of the aspects of the restaurant. But that capacity would be probably around 45, 50. If we're having an event, it depends on the season. In the summertime, we would hope to, potentially extend the events out onto the lawn in the back. Again, we would definitely respect all noise ordinances and make sure, if there is a wedding reception, that the band or DJ shut down prior, in time for any noise ordinance. So, but for an event, we're hoping to be in the summertime, maybe like between 100 and 125 if we can do 150, that would be max, I would say. And the fall, winter, early spring months, that would probably be mostly indoors, and that capacity would be 75 for an event. And that would all be indoors.
That's a pretty good crowd for a boutique hotel. So that's it of my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there's anybody that would be considered the public, who might have a question. I don't see anyone. I don't hear anyone. So at this point in time, unless there's a redirect by Mr. Logan or someone there, we are now at a point where we are open for discussion by commission members and are a recommendation or motion. Mr. Looney.
I had a quick question for staff. As George, you mentioned there's 6 parking spots, which satisfies half the parking requirement. What's an obligation of an owner? They were talking about having outdoor events. Do those need to be maintained at all times as parking, or can they be periodically, not available because they have events on the grounds that consume those spaces?
I would state that it should be maintained as parking always, and if that's what they've delineated. When you look at their site plan here, yeah, that's how they delineated it on plans.
Our outdoor area, we have kind of 2 outdoor areas. One is the courtyard parking area in the back of the building that is surrounded by that brick wall. The other one is right outside of the building back there. It's kind of tucked away. And I'm not exactly, Rebecca, do you have the square footage on the patio area?
I think Jordan commented on that. We were looking at like a 10 by 12 and even, so 120. And if we were to retool that in any way in the future and expand that, I would think that 250 would be a nice maximum for that.
Mr. Chairman, can you all explain, looking at the drawings for the building, it shows the 4 sides of the building. Can you explain, kind of go through that to explain where is the restaurant going to be? Can you just go through those 4 drawings, on the, where everything's going to be?
I'm sorry, who did you want to do that? Do you want me to do that?
If any one of you can explain that.
I can do that. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up that report.
Yeah, it's architectural drawings of the building. It shows the 4 sides of the building.
On my elevations?
It shows the 4 sides of the building. You can explain where everything's going to be.
Sure. It might be easier to do that on plan if you don't mind. Can we look at, let's see, A2?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're looking at A2 for level 1, you can see that there is a bar and a library, which will be primarily used for the restaurant function. And then the dining and parlor and porch would be used for any expansion function. So anything like an event coming online, they would then expand into the parlor, dining, and porch areas. However, day-to-day operation would most likely be in the library and bar, and then also in that lounge area. So those patrons, and I think that's something that we are still working out, could potentially come into that hall number 107 or into the stair hall 104 as the main entrance for either the restaurant or the hotel. Of course, the entrance at stair hall 104 is a very grand entrance, nice entrance for any patron coming in. If you can see the kitchen 116 and kitchen 111 are fairly small rooms. I think that's what I'm talking about as far as function goes. And then we kind of get back into a hotel function again. If you want to look on the other floors, a lot, basically level 2 and level 3 are all hotel function. Jordan had mentioned that there was a roof area, and I wanted to kind of explain that is only available to hotel patrons. So it is not available for restaurant patrons. That is a private deck area as a bonus for that suite.
It's
so
only, yeah, it's only one suite, right?
That's right. So suite number 207 or room 207 on the second floor would have access to that rooftop deck, and that would be all. And then if you go to floor 3 on that same page, you can see there's some office functions come into that. It's primarily bedroom functions, again, kind of that 4-square layout, and then some office storage and utility functions tucked in there as well. Do you think that sufficiently covered that, or would you like me to review the elevations as well?
No, that helped. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Mr. Miller a question?
Go ahead.
Mr. Miller, now that we've heard that there may be up to 75 people attending an event there, have you in any way changed your recommendation with regard to parking and with regard to the waiver?
No, I have not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for council when that time comes.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I think you basically kind of answered my question. This is a waiver. I know waivers are different. Waivers are different than a lot of things we do. They have 6.5 spots space for their 13 rooms, bed and breakfast. If we grant this waiver, with what I understand with the thing, does it have to go all the way back? I don't think it meets. If you got a restaurant that has 50 people, I can't imagine that it hits any kind of criteria we have in the county or city for minimum parking. That's one question. And my second question is, because it is a waiver, if we put a condition such as no alcohol can be served till 1 o'clock on Sunday, can we even legally do that, or because it's a waiver, we do have the right to put that condition on this? If it was put on, that's my question. Thank you.
In my opinion, we can put conditions on waivers if we're going to grant them. Those conditions must be reasonable and must be non-discriminatory in nature. With regard to the parking, that's why I asked Jordan if he had any changes, because it appeared to me the number of parking spaces has stayed the same and the number of participants has exceeded what we initially looked at.
So we're on the same page. The bodies before us put conditions on this, and I'd have to think it has a parking component to it. It seems to me if we pass this, we've bypassed a body that approved this, this whole deal based on one thing and maybe not another. So that's my question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Logan, were you answering? Were you responding to that?
No, I thought I responded to that.
Okay. I have an inquiry by Mr. May, and then a response from Mr. Cockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just with respect to any waivers, I guess this would be generally to our council. Since the city has adopted and put in place the ordinances that cover entertainment districts downtown with open containers, would that not supersede any type of waivers that we may, or any regulatory body would consider in the future?
Mr. May, we cannot do something that diminishes the ordinance, but we do have the authority, if we're granting a condition or a waiver, to enhance what is provided by the ordinance.
I guess if I may further ask a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
The thing, I guess, this is to our staff, to Mr. Miller, and I guess Mr. Logan too, if he wanted to chime in. Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Always appreciate Mr. Logan's counsel. Under Chapter 131, it's the section that deals with offenses against public peace. That's where our city noise ordinance is. Sorry, the city noise ordinance, not ours. The city noise ordinance. And it specifically talks about cutting noise off at between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So I just wanted to make sure the applicants were aware of that. There are instances where the city can grant entertainment or special permits for entertainment events that could extend past that, but typically 10 p.m. is the hours that any type of music, any type of outdoor event would need to cease. It also says that any noise that can be audible greater than 50 feet away can also be a violation. And I say that just as a point of information, and I guess to our staff and our legal counsel, in terms of any regulations or further requirements that we put on, as it is a conditional use. Just taking that in consideration, certainly not want to limit the applicant's ability to have events that would be further regulating on them that doesn't apply to the other district or to the rest of the folks in the district. So I guess my question is, in light of that, they're next to a funeral home, they're next to a church. Most of the events would not be taking place during church hours on Sundays, I'm guessing. And then for funerals, you know, I don't know what time the latest funerals are typically, but I would think by late afternoon, most of those are concluded. So based on that, would that change any recommendations, Mr. Miller, of our city planning staff recommendations?
No, sir, it wouldn't change my recommendation.
Mr. Logan, would you agree that based on the city ordinance, that would adequately address most noise concerns? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ask you that, but I'm sorry. Would you, in light of that, I would ask your opinion, so sorry.
Mr. May, I'm not going to answer whether I think 10 o'clock is adequate or not. That's what the city commission passed. That's what our ordinance is. I just know that we cannot, by this group, extend that time to say we don't care if the city has 10, we're going to make it 11. Now, if we would like to make it 9, I think we do have that authority.
That was the question. And again, I apologize for asking your interpreter. That's what I meant to say. I didn't mean to do that. So sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Mr. Cockley, your response, and then well, Ms. LeGrew's light went out, so I'm not sure she wants to talk.
I would like to respond there, Mr. Jackson, if you don't mind.
If you don't mind.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, sorry cutting you off there. I just wanted to, while this discussion goes on and we go into issues kind of tangential to the specific request that you all have, and you're discussing the concept of conditions on any approval that may hopefully happen tonight, I wanted to remind the body that there will be a conditional use permit that has to be approved by the ARB subsequent to this. So there is a separate body that will be looking at this and will be considering any conditions they deem necessary. And so subject to your decision tonight, I just let you know as another option perhaps for the board that's more often used to handling questions like this with these uses downtown and in the central business district. And in this case, a property that's directly adjacent to the central business district. We would be more than happy for any conditions that this body would like for them to consider, to also just pass that along to the ARB for consideration when they take the item up themselves. And that might also be another way we could handle that. And you all could still communicate that you have whatever concerns you may have about the use specifically. Just wanted to offer that.
Mr. Lusher?
Yes. I actually kind of want to chime in because I believe we're going down a rabbit hole that we don't need to. There has been a lot of concern regarding the noise ordinance in particular within this property. Mr. Jackson, you are correct. It is a quiet neighborhood for one reason. It is not residential. It is a business district. Every adjacent property with respect to Ms. Bierenberg's property across the street and the apartments on the corner, every other property is either a church, a lobbyist, a lawyer, a funeral home. The reason it's quiet at night is because there's no one there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second time a group has come to us with a request to develop this property that is beneficial to downtown. And I think at this point, ARB does have their own inputs, which I think will address many of our concerns regarding keeping the historical integrity of the neighborhood and the property itself, with us adding conditions that do not need to be added and also are detrimental to the actual economic development of this particular property. I don't believe that's our job. This is a property that is in one block from pretty much every other business you've described, which are restaurants, bars. We have a theater. We have a vibrant downtown. This will add to that. So with regards to conditions of putting this on, we're overthinking it. That's my 2 cents on this. And as far as I'm concerned at this point, I think we need to pass this motion or pass this waiver and send it to ARB and see what their concerns are.
Okay, except there's one clarification. If you go directly behind the mortuary, there are residential homes immediately behind the mortuary and that parking lot there. Just
behind the mortuary, correct, and down Petticoat Lane.
Catty corner to this business, that's about 50 feet. It's not out of hearing distance, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. Just making sure that we all understand what the lay of the land is, and then when we go on the other side, we're across West Main from this facility, just behind the lawyer offices are residential. So I'm not saying what's immediately adjacent to the facility, but as the crow flies, there are residences there and there are families who live there that may be affected by what happens in the business. I'm not advocating either way.
And I agree with you, but also taking note that every single street downtown Frankfort does have a residence or two on it.
Yeah.
So just keeping things in perspective, I do not believe this one business should be unfairly called out. I've heard nothing from tonight that indicates that the owners and the developers of this property intend on putting in a nightclub. They're planning on holding weddings during the day. They're having a restaurant. So as I said, this is just a word of caution to the rest of the board members that I do believe we are overthinking this waiver.
Yeah, we might be. Mr. May?
I was going to say also further say too that having grown up on Wapping Street and most of my family growing up down there, we had numerous times the Orlando Brown House had events or has events continuously during the day and in the evening. Liberty Hall has events in their property during the day and the evening. And then also the city has the Ward Oaks Amphitheater at the end of Main Street, which is has had events that go well past the 10 o'clock time. And I would agree with Mr. Lusher. We certainly would not want to put any additional burden on any business that is going to be in that area. And that's my point. I'm just making sure that everybody understands this is what the current ordinance is, and that we didn't want to see. Obviously, this board, I don't think we're going to put any restrictions, but I would hope that any additional, and this is getting outside of my purview on the Planning Commission, but as a former mayor, I would encourage everyone to support projects like this. I'm excited about it as someone who grew up in that district. We always enjoyed having events down there. Now that's me, and to further clarify too, I might be biased because I'm a drummer, but we enjoyed having the events, and I know sometimes the neighbors would come over and listen to the events. So I would hope that this project gets the full support of our board and further down the line any other regulatory boards that will look at this as an opportunity for all of us. And I'm excited to get to hopefully be able to come down and have dinner or a drink or come to an event.
Okay, Ms. LeGroux.
Thank you, William. I just wanted to say and hopefully reassure everyone that it's our full intention to comply with your 10 o'clock p.m. noise ordinance for these events. We take that very seriously, and I just wanted to reassure you that we fully intend to comply with those ordinances. And that's it. That's the main point I wanted to make.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lee.
Yeah, just to respond to Mr. Lusher, I think everybody knows I'm as pro-business, pro-growth as anybody out there. I just had a few phone calls. People were worried, and I was more worried about the rooftop, if it was going to be a rooftop bar, which satisfied my questions. I'm all for it, but this is a waiver, and there was a body before us, a sitting body before us that put restrictions on it, and they're asking us to come back. So I was being a little more thorough, maybe going down a rabbit hole, as you said, but I was kind of being thorough as to what it is, because just be careful. But Tim, you and I are almost on the same line here.
I appreciate
want to tell you that. My questions were outdoor noise, to be quite honest. Thank you.
Understood.
All right.
Thank you,
now, I'll remind everyone that we are also looking at whether or not there's an appropriate motion to place on the floor. So we don't have to discuss it until tomorrow morning. If there's a motion that can be placed on the floor.
Commissioner Jerry, thank you. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I make the motion that we approve the waiver, but I would like to put one condition on it, and that condition is no alcohol sales on Sunday till 1 o'clock. Thank you.
I have one disagreement with it, Keith. Respectfully, brunch on Sunday starts at 11, and that is unfair to a restaurant in downtown.
But we have a motion on the floor, and I will second the motion. Now, we're at the point of discussion on the motion. Mr. Lesher.
Yes, Mr. Lee, I would ask you to modify your motion to allow for a reasonable time for brunch. I would like to dial it back to at least noon if you don't feel comfortable at 11. With any restaurant or any hotel or restaurant in downtown, brunch is quite honestly, it's a vital portion of our revenue for the week. and allowing or restricting this one restaurant versus all the other restaurants downtown, which are just equally distanced from other businesses you may be concerned about, is unfair. So like I said, I would like a modification.
How about if I change the condition from 1 o'clock to 12 o'clock inside sales only? Would that be fair?
I would agree to that.
And I'll second again. Do I see any other hands on discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Loon, and then Mr. Mack.
One of the things I was going to suggest we consider is that there be a distinction between guests of the hotel and outside patrons, so that, like, I don't know why you'd necessarily need to restrict those sales for guests of the hotel earlier with their breakfast or whatever, that we consider potentially that being a distinguishment for outside patronage of that noon hour.
Mr. Lee, I don't disagree. The fact that it's hard to distinguish who's there, who's walking in, who's not. That was my reasoning for that, for my condition.
Okay, Mr. May.
Mr. Chairman, I would speak against any motion or any restrictions that are further restrictions on the sale or serving of alcohol that goes outside of what the city's current rules and regulations are on that, and especially being in the entertainment district. And I apologize, I could try to find it real quick, but I don't remember off the top of my head what the hours are for Sunday in the entertainment district. I apologize for not recalling that, but I did vote for that when I was mayor, so I would stay just to be consistent that I would certainly not want to restrict any type of sale or consumption of alcoholic beverage especially on a Sunday for a brunch.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is this an entertainment district or a historical district? Maybe I misspoke.
Keith, it is actually in the entertainment district as well. It's zoned historic district. The entertainment district is actually an overlay that one has nothing to do, quite honestly, with the other. But it is obviously it is a part of the restaurant scene. So.
Let's see what the vote says. My motion doesn't change other than what condition I put for Slusher from 1 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and for inside use only.
Can we consider the conditions and the motion separately?
Just a moment. I need some clarification. Mr. Logan.
Yes, sir.
The commission has a motion and a second on the table. Am I allowed to invite someone other than commissioners to comment on the commission motion?
In my opinion, rules, the motion has been made and seconded. The question should be called.
Okay. Ms. Burnswood, I cannot allow you to speak. So with that, Mr. Cockley, you cannot speak. Madam Secretary, okay, Mr. Swager, you can speak. You're a member of the commission.
Thank you. Two things, a statement and a question. One is, I would concur with Mr. May on, don't see a need for putting any type of restriction on here. I don't see the logic to it. So the question I have, is just, I guess, a point of order, is if this goes to a vote with the proposed condition and it fails, can a new proposal be put forward and considered by the commission?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so this property is both in the historic and the entertainment district as well? It's in both? Is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we're continuing to take evidence. We have a motion and a second on the
Mr. Stewart, I can't respond to that. Ms. Sewell, call the roll.
Mr. Boggs,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Looney,
No.
Mr. Lusher,
No.
Mr. May,
I vote no.
Mr. Sanderson,
We can't hear you.
Mr. Sanderson,
I'm thinking. I'll vote yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. May, so I vote no.
Mr. Swager,
No.
Mr. Wright,
No.
Chairman Jackson.
Yes.
Motion fails 6-4.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose another motion. Okay.
Please.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the waiver of section 4.06.34 E&F to allow the hotel to provide food services and liquor sales to patrons who are not guests of the hotel, as well as guests of the hotel for the property at 300 Washington Street, and that's without restriction.
Second.
I could not understand that. Could you repeat that?
Okay. Is it because I talk too fast or I'm breaking up?
A little mumble.
You talk too low.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve the waiver of section 4.06.34 of the city's regulations in order to allow the hotel to provide food services and liquor sales to patrons who are not guests of the hotel, as well as guests of the hotel for the property at 300 Washington Street without additional restrictions.
And I second that.
Okay, now the request is for section 4.06.34 items E and F.
That's what I meant to say.
And the second intended to second that? Yes, okay. Now we have a motion. Discussion on the new motion. Okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Boggs,
No.
Mr. Lee,
No, and if the chairman will allow me, I'd like to explain my vote.
No.
My vote no was basically for the fact that we have 6.5 parking spots for a boutique hotel. Now we have a restaurant that could have as much as 125 people there. I think they're skirting around something, and I'm also mindful of the patrons around there. So that's my vote. Thank you.
Mr. Looney,
Yes.
Mr. Lusher,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Sanderson,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Chairman Jackson.
I'll vote no. And my reason for voting no is that the Planning Commission can impose more stringent conditions than is permitted by the city ordinance, and therefore we have that right. And we're abdicating that. With that, it appears that the motion passes, and Mr. Tyler, Ms. Burnworth, and Mr. LaRue, please inform your company that the commission has granted your request for a waiver of that section and those two items. Welcome to Frankfort.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very
sir.
much.
Thank
Now,
you.
we have one more thing to do before we go home. Actually, two. And Mr. Logan, the first one comes to you, and that is we're now embarking on the implementation of the comprehensive plan, and there's some confusion. Maybe it's not confusion, but a difficulty in interpreting what is and what isn't permitted in terms of conversations with agencies outside of the planning commission on items that may be appearing on the agenda, that are on the agenda, etc. Please, if you don't mind, provide the commission a brief summation of what might be considered ex parte communication with regard to those items.
Ex parte communication is taking in any evidence, statements, materials that are on item which will appear before you that is not made in open or public meetings. It is an improper act to have someone attempt to persuade a member of any commission or board to vote or act in a particular way that is not in the form of an open public meeting.
Does anybody have a question of Mr. Logan?
Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Swigert.
Yeah, and I guess I'm the newest member on the commission, and I was really wanting to get some clarification, just because, you know, as all of us, I'm sure, have experienced, people want to talk, they want to ask about cases that may be coming up or things that are on the agenda, and, you know, I don't know that a conversation necessarily would persuade me, you know, one way or the other, but is there something that if we're approached by anyone, whether it's a friend or somebody that's involved with a case, that we just need to cut off that conversation, or what kind of limit do we have? Or what kind of...
You have to use your judgment in that, but yes, you should cut off the conversation and indicate that you can only consider items which are brought to you in open public forums. The reason what you can explain to them is if some friend says to you, hey, I think you ought to look at this alley, you ought to look at this use of property, you ought to look at these things, that if someone finds that they talked with you, a third party may move to have you disqualified. And so they may be hurting their case by telling you. For instance, in Lexington, for a number of years, individuals would talk with members at the request of their attorney, and if it were voted wrong, he would then bring out that they'd spoken to someone beforehand and have their votes set aside. So I really think it's bad practice, and I think you can easily notify everyone, I want to hear your concerns, but please come and testify and put it on the record so everybody can hear it.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jackson, just to add to that, in the last 2 weeks, I've received multiple emails from people that do not even live in Franklin County about something that hasn't even, something that might come up someday in Peaks Mill that hadn't even come up as an item. I guess my question is, maybe it's the staff, do y'all give out commissioners' emails freely, or do these people work hard to find my email, or what's the protocol on that, please?
Mr. Lee, Robert Hewitt. Staff of the county planning departments do not release contact information of the commission members, only their names.
May I follow up on Mr. Lee's question? Because that has actually happened to me as well. In that case of us receiving an unsolicited email, should we forward that to council?
Gosh, no, but yeah, you can. I'll be happy to respond to those. I think as long as you disclose you received that email and that you did not consider it, that certainly is going to be sufficient. You can't help what somebody sends you, Mr. Lusher.
Understood.
As the outgoing chairperson, I've received a whole bunch of emails, and what I do is simply forward them to the staff. I don't respond to anybody. I simply forward the email to the staff, and staff can either respond or not.
I think Mr. Logan would much rather have it going to the staff as opposed to himself.
Mr. Lusher, you're exactly right, but I'll be happy to take it if you send it to me.
Are we being less than good public servants if we just flat out ignore it? This is what I've been doing. I've not been responding to the few I have. I just don't feel like I would.
You certainly do not have to respond to that.
Okay. If there's nothing else, the very last thing on the agenda, and I'm glad that we're able to get to it, and that is the, let me get it right here, the report of special committees. You recall in December, the chair appointed a special committee for the nomination of a slate of officers for the current fiscal year. And Mr. Lee was chair of that committee. And Mr. Lee will take your committee's report at this time. Please.
Yes, sir. First, I would like to thank our outgoing chairman, Mr. Sharon Jackson, who served multiple years. Our hope was to keep a contingency through the comprehensive plan, but COVID had other ideas for that. So we certainly thank all of our officers for their work and dedication. The selection committee was based off myself, Miss Patty Cross, and Mr. May. And our recommendations to the committee for our selection of officers this year would be based on what we've done traditionally, which is alternate a city appointee to a county appointee, and vice versa. So there's a blend of it along with the governor's appointee. And our recommendations to Planning and Zoning Commission are as Mr. Wright as president, Mr. Bill May as vice chairman, actually president, Mr. Wright is chairman, excuse me. Mr. Bill May is vice chairman, and Mr. Lusher as secretary treasurer.
Okay. I believe rules of order says that while we can accept the slate as presented by the committee, that the chair must ask if there are any nominations from the floor for those three positions: chairman, vice chairman, or secretary treasurer. Chair will entertain a motion to cease nomination.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to cease nomination, and the recommendations that I presented, I make the motion as such.
Okay. Been moved and properly seconds that nomination cease and that the commission elect the slate of officers that were recommended by the committee.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you.
David Boggs.
Thank you, Mr. Boggs.
And Madam Chairman, if you don't mind calling the roll, please do so.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Looney,
Yes.
Mr. Lusher,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Sanderson,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Chairman Jackson.
Yes.
Motion's unanimous.
Mr. Jackson, it's Robert Hewitt, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the newest employee at Franklin County, as well as the new land use planner, Mr. Daniel Walker. Daniel, you're still with us?
I am.
All right. If you wouldn't mind, turn your camera on and introduce yourself to everyone.
Hey.
Okay.
Hey, Daniel.
Give them a quick rundown of your history and your education, if you don't mind.
History. I've been all over the place. I've been started out as an intern planning and zoning in Madison County down in Richmond. Graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Geography. Have a certificate from EKU in Geographic Information Systems. I've done about 5 years in state government. I've started as GIS at Department of Revenue doing parcel mapping. And then I bounced over to KYTC and did bike ped coordinator for about a year. And then COVID hit. And then I got the opportunity to become branch manager of the branch I left doing parcel mapping. And now finally I'm working in my community.
And you're a resident of South Frankfort, is that correct?
Yep.
Very good. So I would like to welcome Daniel, to the Franklin County team and to the Planning Commission, and I'm so proud and happy to have him with us and add to our staff and to help serve the community.
Happy to be here.
Welcome to the team, and I'm sure the commission looks forward to interfacing with you with regard to all of these items that will be coming on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
All right, now I'll be a regular member of the Planning Commission at the February meeting. Look out. Mr. May.
I just want to take one point of personal privilege to say thank you to our chair for his many, many years of service. No one has dedicated more time to that I'm aware of anyway, as a board appointee than Mr. Jackson, and I too agree too. Certainly want to be sure that my vote on the previous issue in no way was meant to in any way abdicate any authority from the Planning Commission. I think the Planning Commission should stay as autonomous as possible and be able to make any type of recommendations as possible. And I just don't want to say, Mr. Jackson, thank you for your many years of service, and I hope that we get to keep your expertise for many more.
Here, here. Thank you very much. I think it's time to go eat supper.
Mr. Jackson, I want to say I want to duplicate what's been said by Mr. May. You always have been a wonderful chairman to work with and very dedicated, and you testify very well from that seat.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Thank you,
Have
Mr.
a
Logan.
good evening.
All right. Good night, guys. Gail.
Good night. Good night, Mr. Sewell.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Okay, where's the leave?